Welcome back, folks. Well, today we're going to take a look at the Sunday Assembly, the very last talk of the day. So, if you just take a look at the program here, we have it in front of us here. And we go all the way down to the afternoon session. And this is given by a governing body member, Geoffrey Jackson, Remain in Jehovah's Great Spiritual Temple. And I found this to be one of the most confusing parts of this whole assembly. It was all about Jesus, and then they went back to the days of Israel. So we're going to take a look at this, folks. I want to give a big call out to Wally. Wally covered this point. Thank you. And I think these points, we need to keep covering them. So let's talk about this for a bit, this convention. Geoffrey Jackson, he says they spent millions of dollars on their new video series, like it's a gift from the governing body. We spent millions of dollars. Does that remind you guys of anything? Well, let's take a close look at the clip here.
Yes, we might ask ourselves the question, why has the governing body spent millions of dollars? Why has the governing body spent millions of dollars on preparing this good news according to Jesus? Do you know the answer? I think you know the answer, don't you? It's a fantastic way to help us to learn more about Jesus and the love Jehovah has shown through Jesus.
So now we took a look at that clip. Why has the governing body spent millions of dollars? Did we waste our money? Wait a minute. We didn't waste whose money? Geoffrey, you got that wrong. It's not your money. It's not the governing body's money. So there's a lot of confusion around that, folks. It's not their money. It kind of reminds me of Moses taking credit for the water. That didn't go too good for him either. So something to think about, governing body. And it's confusing. So let's look at the JW clips of Jesus, the Kingdom Hall builds, crowds at assemblies. Let's look at this.
Do those that hope to live forever on earth have a place in the spiritual temple? In a vision, John saw a great crowd rendering Jehovah sacred service day and night in his temple. He hears them say, "Salvation we owe to our God, who is seated on the throne, and to the Lamb." The great crowd acknowledged that the ransom sacrifice of Jesus makes living forever on earth possible. Where in the spiritual temple do they worship? The tabernacle had a courtyard where priests performed their duties. The temples constructed later had an outer courtyard where those who were not priests could worship God. Those of the great crowd worship Jehovah in the earthly courtyard of the spiritual temple. They, along with the anointed, joyfully worship Jehovah in his spiritual temple by approaching him in prayer, publicly declaring their hope, meeting together, and encouraging one another. We can worship Jehovah anywhere as long as we remain in his spiritual temple. This arrangement will lead to the uniting of Jehovah's universal family. Jehovah God will fulfill his ultimate purpose.
Well, this talk is a mess. Are we under the law of Moses, priests, temples, sacrifices? Or are we followers of Jesus under the law of love?
If we really appreciate what Jesus has done for us and what Jehovah has arranged, then we'll still keep on trying to do our best to offer Jehovah something. Now, what can we offer him? Romans 12:1 mentions we can offer up our bodies, our whole being, you might say, to Jehovah in dedication, and then using our strength, energy, our thoughts, our desires to focus on what Jehovah wants. Hebrews chapter 13, verse 15, what does that say? That we can make a sacrifice of praise. Yes, we can praise Jehovah. It costs us something to go out witnessing, but we make that sacrifice. And then Hebrews 13, verse 16 says that our efforts to do good and share with others are also like sacrifices. So, brothers and sisters, what are some of the sacrifices that you have made or you are making? Well, some of us have given up a preferred job or that beautiful dream home because that job or the dream home perhaps restricts us from what we can offer Jehovah. Or perhaps some have moved to another location, come to Bethel, or gone on a special project, or gone to preach where the need is greater. Many have set aside personal preferences, personal matters, because they want to focus on keeping the kingdom first in their lives.
Jackson talks about sacred service, building kingdom halls, cleaning toilets, donating money, all labeled as worship. But where's the love? Where's the freedom Jesus promised? They say Jesus is the high priest, but they act like they're the priests in charge. They act like high priests, collecting the sacrifices and dictating the rules, just like in the time of Israel. They like that. They did a little bit of Jesus here, and then they had to switch it right at the end. Get you guys as the audience back into the days of the Israelites. They might as well, JW, they might as well put an E between the J and the W and call themselves Jews.
Then what about the symbolic, figurative, or spiritual river of water of life? Now, as Jehovah's Witnesses, are we going all around the planet trying to find, where is the river? Duh. It's not a real location, is it?
You see, but they can't do that. So they did the next best thing. They robbed the Jews of a lot of their stuff.
The ancient tabernacle had a barrier that separated the most holy from the holy. Today, the holy represents the spirit-begotten condition of those who have the hope of serving as priests in heaven while they are still on earth. The curtain, separating the holy and most holy, represents the human flesh of spirit-begotten ones, something that prevents them from entering heaven. Outside the holy, before performing sacred service, priests cleansed themselves by means of a copper basin. That copper basin reminds the anointed to remain spiritually and morally clean.
And then they threw a lot of it away, and they do it all wrong. If you're a Jew, you would be insulted. So let's talk about where all the money comes from. Jackson says we spent millions. All the while, the rank and file, the pensioners, the single parents, and the kids, they're contributing. They're doing the work. And they're leaving their estates over to the watchtower. So is the GB we doing this? They think they are. It's a dangerous position. So let's move forward here. The half-naked Jesus problem. So let's take a look at that.
First, what was prophesied? Well, we invite you to watch an excerpt from the Good News According to Jesus, and afterwards we will identify the prophecies that were fulfilled.
And look, the heavens were opened up, and he saw God's Spirit descending like a dove and coming upon him. Look, also, a voice from the heavens said,
"This is my Son, the beloved, whom I have approved."
Well, here we have shirtless, dreamy look version scripture image of a humble Jewish man. This is what we have. Wally pointed out something sharp. Why didn't the crowd clap after Jackson's big speech about the millions spent? Maybe it's because they were too uncomfortable with this new Jesus, this half naked one. Well, the Jesus in these videos, let's be honest, half naked, airbrushed, and more like a Hollywood model than a humble Jewish man that the Bible describes. So it's no wonder the audience was silent. This isn't the Jesus of the scriptures. This is a fantasy Jesus designed to stir emotion, not truth. So let's really talk about the money. You know, that's important at these assemblies. It's all about the money. Jackson gives this talk right at the very end, the very last thing he has to get your attention, and he's asking for money. All the way through this talk, he's talking about the Jewish system, how they contributed the tenth. They did this last year. They did this in their annual meetings. They really love the Jewish system and how they contributed, and the high priests were there, and they picture themselves as a high priest, dictating and demanding that the people do all the work for free. So yeah, let's take a look at some footage of donations, volunteers, and the elderly donating.
Jehovah appreciates the effort made by his worshippers each day to show their love for his son Jesus. You are tirelessly devoting time and physical power to advance the work of preaching about the kingdom. As loyal friends of Jesus and Jehovah, since June 2020, the article series How Your Donations Are Used has chronicled this power. Each one tells a story highlighting how donations are being used to further the kingdom work.
Well, let's set the record straight. The governing body didn't spend their money. It's the brothers and the sisters, the volunteers, the cleaners, the cooks, the pensioners. You guys paid for this. Your free labor built the kingdom halls. Your donations funded this video and this whole series of videos and these assemblies. Jackson stands up there like Moses hitting the rock and says, "Look what we did." But it was the people doing the work. Well, in the days of Moses, it was God that made the water come out of the stone. But you know, even Jackson could have said, "Well, look at what Jehovah has done." You know, he could have gave Jehovah the credit, right? But no, he said, "Look at what we have done
Why has the governing body spent millions of dollars?
for you guys." They gave you a half naked Jesus. Some in the comments are calling it soft porn. So this is a really sketchy assembly, folks. Let's take a look just before we close out here. Jesus replaced the law with love. Remember that? You know, so why do they keep going back and forth to the old law? Jesus replaced the law with love. That's what he died for. You know, and here's the part they don't tell you. Jesus came to replace the law, not repackage it. Romans 10:4 says, Christ is the end of the law. And Romans 13:10 says, love does no harm to a neighbor, so love is the fulfillment of the law. That's pretty powerful for love. It's love, folks. We don't need a governing body acting like the high priest. We don't need a temple. We don't need sacrifices of time, money, and labor for a human organization. Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. That's it. No middlemen, no confusion, just love. We'll see you guys in the next video. Bye for now.